Hello.
Oh.
Pastor Knudsen.
Good evening.
Pastor
everybody.
Haynes.
Good to see you, my brother.
Sister Gloria.
How are you?
God bless.
You too, as well. Sarah.
I'm back. Thanks everyone for being here today. And thanks, Mike. We're going to give about 2 more minutes as people are jumping on. Hopefully everyone is well. Enjoying, what's today? Your Thursday.
Yeah.
Oh, Mike, if you can give me co-host again, that I dropped the line. Thank you.
Yeah, we all had to learn, my sister.
You are
Yeah.
now co-host.
Thank you. Like all of a sudden everyone was gone. I'm like, oh, that's not what I wanted to do.
Oh.
So like normal, what I'm going to do is just show some slides, read through them, and then I will remove them from the screen so that we can all see each other. And then we'll give the community opportunity to introduce themselves. But as I push through, I just want to say welcome. Welcome to the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. The mission is to work with the Mayor, Police Commissioner, Portland Police Bureau, and Portland's diverse constituencies to solicit and exchange information between the community and Portland Police Bureau to achieve the desired outcomes of equitable policing, which exceeds constitutional requirements and meaningful community engagement with and trust in PPB. The directives, PCCEP members will independently assess the settlement agreement using the tools outlined in this plan. PCCEP will work to facilitate positive police-community relationships and promote public safety by assessing Portland Police Bureau's current community engagement processes and developing recommendations and strategies for systems to increase public outreach and engagement. The engagement, PCCEP will engage with Portland's diverse communities and organizations, serving those impacted by previous exposures to excessive force and fatal shootings. Key areas will include the following: constitutional policing, use of force, interactions with people experiencing behavioral health challenges, complaint investigations, and racial justice. Welcome again to the Settlement Agreement and Policy Subcommittee. The goal of this committee is to ensure that the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, which is PCCEP, remains engaged with the objectives of the Department of Justice, settlement agreement, and handle any related businesses. The objectives include, but are not limited to, reviewing the annual Portland Police Bureau report, facilitate engagement with government partners, ensure PCCEP meets regularly with necessary partners in the public community, and to monitor PPB ultimately meeting all necessary requirements of the settlement agreement. I am Zainab Folk. I am the chair of the Settlement Agreement and Policy Subcommittee. I've been a member of PCCEP since November 2020 and the subcommittee chair since January of this year. What we're going to do is go through the agenda, focuses on city and court monitors on this meeting. We're going to do a welcome and roll call. Then we're going to have a presentation by the city auditor about the Independent Review Board police oversight. And then we have some special guests from the community who have legacy information about what's been going on regarding the settlement agreement, and who have been a part of the Portland community and providing us a 10 years progress report, including about the court monitoring. And then we'll have closing remarks. But first, if we have any PCCEP members, and I'm gonna try to bring this down so that you can all see each other. If you can't, hopefully you can. Again, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. I've stopped sharing. If you want to introduce yourselves, I'm gonna start with PCCEP members. And do I need to call on you, or you call coming up on? Because if so, I'll start with Gloria
Okay.
Jansen. Thank
My
you.
name is Gloria Canson, as Zainab said. I am the chairperson for the Youth Subcommittee. I use pronouns she and her, and we're getting ready for our Youth Speak Out. It's going to be on Monday, April the 18th from 12 to 2. It's going to be via Zoom. And I just wanted to give you some bullet points on what we're going to be discussing at that time. Toys as guns used for violence, suicide prevention, the heavy drugs that are coming into our neighborhood schools that are laced with fentanyl. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Sure.
The summer youth safety, what kind of programs are going to be available to our youth this summer? Police in the community, what's your relationship to them? And runaways and abduction. All of these are bullet points that I think that we can get our youth engaged in and give the young people an opportunity to set the stage for further conversation. So I encourage you, if you can, come out to the Youth Speak Out. Again, that's Monday, April the 18th from 12 to 2.
Thank you so much, Gloria, and appreciate you sharing that. I see Tia here. Did you want to, Tia Dubé? Thanks.
Sorry, my name is Tia Palafox, actually.
Oh,
I'll
Tia
change it.
Palafox, excuse me.
It's okay. Maiden name, Tia Palafox. I'm the PCCEP member on the Behavioral Health Subcommittee. My pronouns are she, her. Thank you so much.
And Tia's been really working closely with Gloria too, with the youth Speak Out. We've all been working together, and we're so excited for that for next month. And so as Gloria shared, you know, we're looking forward to you coming out, or you could say participating on Zoom or whatever platform we're working with. Next, we have PCCEP sponsor Mayor's Office. Anyone here representing the Mayor's Office? Anyone here representing the Police Bureau?
Hi there,
Attorney's
sorry.
Office, Ames, you didn't come through if you were talking. I think you might have been muted, but I'm not sure your audio is working.
Are you talking,
Yeah.
who just spoke? I'm sorry.
I think
Is
it was
that Mike?
me.
Okay, thanks. Is it Mary Claire, you want to speak for the police? And then I'll come back
No.
to the mayor's
Oh, no,
office, which I
no.
think,
I apologize. I was just coming on. Could you repeat the question, hon?
okay, yes. So I'm gonna go back. I asked if anyone here representing the mayor's office. If you want to introduce yourself representing the mayor's office. And then the next question, anyone representing the police bureau would like to introduce
I-
themselves.
Okay, sorry if that's all. I didn't know if there was a question. Yes, I am here, and I work at the Portland Police Bureau on the DOJ settlement agreement, as you know. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Mary Claire. Anyone else here from Police Bureau before I move on to the next? City Attorney's Office?
Hi, this is Sarah Ames.
Thanks, Sarah. Are you planning on jumping off at 7?
I do have to go to the Police Accountability Commission at 7. Often they try to schedule them so they don't overlap, but tonight, unfortunately, they do. And Anika Bent Albert, who has supported PCCEP in the past, who many of you know, will be stepping in at that time.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. Anyone else from the attorney's office before we go? Anyone from the Office of Equity and Human Rights or PCCEP staff?
And Zainab, I am representing PCCEP staff tonight. My name is Mike Myers. I'm the Community Safety Transition Director for the City of Portland. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mike. Did you want to share anything at this time, or you want me to move forward?
I think let's move forward tonight until I get more information about what's going on. I'd be glad to come back and share.
Thank you. Anyone, the Department of Justice, yes, we see you. Do you like to introduce yourself?
Hi there, Jared Hager, he, him pronouns, U.S. Department of Justice. Here in my role as monitor of the settlement agreement between the United States and the City of Portland. Appreciate the great program you put together tonight, Zainab. Thanks for having us. And I got two colleagues are here to introduce.
I see that. So we want to have them introduce themselves. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Jonas. Hi, everyone. My name is Jade Magana. I'm a paralegal and I'm with Jared and Jonas from the U.S. Department of Justice. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Jade. Are you new to this session or, okay, great. So just want to make sure. So just bear with us. Thank you so much, Jade. Jonas?
Zainab, thank you so much for having us. This is Jonas from Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division in DC. Pleasure to be here. Take care.
Thank you. I'm going to go now to the Compliance Officer, Community Liaison and Representatives.
Yes, hi, Dennis Rosenbaum, pronouns he, him, compliance officer whose work is to monitor compliance with the settlement agreement. Thank you.
Thank you too. I want to now, let those who are here as guests or also community at large or stakeholders to the settlement agreement introduce themselves at this time. I would want to start with our community at large and let our guest speakers go last, as we're going to be going right into your presentation. So anyone here from the just community at large who'd like to introduce themselves?
I'm Catherine Hart from the League of Women Voters.
Nice to see you here, Catherine. Thank you.
I'm Pastor Robin Weisner, City Councilman. I also was on the AMA Investigating Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara?
Rochelle Silver with the Mental Health Alliance.
Thanks, Rochelle. Barbara, I think you were trying to join on too. Okay.
Yeah, Barbara Bushinsky, Portland Cop Watch.
Say that one more time.
Portland Cop Watch, Barbara Bushinsky.
Okay, thank you.
Debbie Iona, League of Women Voters.
Great. Thank you, Debbie. I'm sorry. I know I see Nia Franco's name here. I just can't remember which group you're with.
Hi.
I apologize.
No worries. I'm Nia Franco. I'm actually a member of the COCO team.
Thank you, Coco. I was going to say attorney's office, but okay, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else before we move into our guest speakers? I think I see a David Gwynn. Is it? I'm not sure, Reverend Dr. Mark Knudsen, have you spoke yet or introduced yourself yet?
Yes, thank you, Zainab, for having us. Reverend Knudsen, Senior Pastor, Augustana Lutheran Church, Portland, and one of the founding members of the AMA Coalition for Justice and Police Reform, and on the steering committee.
Thank you.
My dear friends, thank you.
Dr. Haynes.
Yes, the Reverend Dr. Leroy Haynes, president of the Urbana Ministerial Alliance and chairperson of the about a Minister Alliance Coalition for Justice and Police Reform.
Great. And before you go, Mary, I just want to put the PowerPoint up real quick, just so that we can get to your section here. And I can do a formal introduction. Can everyone see the screen? Hopefully. We are going to have the City of Portland Auditor do her introduction as well, and who's going to be here speaking with us about the Independent Review Board, police oversight, and some changes that are coming in a couple of months to the city, and just give an update on the settlement agreement and how everything is going. Mary Hall Caballero. And I'm going to try to put you on the full screen.
Hi, my name is Mary Hall Caballero. I'm the City Auditor of Portland, and I appreciate the invitation to come talk to you all tonight. I think that I've met most of you, but there are some of you who I have not met. I'd start with talking a little bit about what the Auditor's Office is and does in the City of Portland, and what the Division Independent Police Review in my office is responsible for. I am the fifth elected official in the City of Portland. So the mayor and other commissioners, they have two responsibilities. They sit at the city council and make policy, and they also run bureaus. And my job is not to set policy or run bureaus, but to basically keep an eye on the other five in their executive branch capacities. And so we do that by through audits and performance audits. And we have the city ombudsman is in the auditor's office. The council clerk is in the auditor's office. And we also run the archives and records management for the City of Portland. And so Independent Police Review is one of 5 divisions in my office, and the one that I am here to talk about tonight. I learned, well, let me back up a little bit. I'm in my 8th year as the city auditor, and this is my final year. I opted not to run for re-election. And so I have been involved with the settlement agreement since my first day. It was waiting for me when I arrived. It had all been done before I got here. And it will go on, unfortunately, for several more years, probably long after I'm gone. And so the Independent Police Review is in the settlement agreement. It has responsibilities in the settlement agreement for conducting investigations, and it and the Internal Affairs Division in the Portland Police Bureau share responsibilities as the fact gatherers when a complaint is filed against a police officer alleging misconduct. And so there are 14 people who work in Independent Police Review right now, and 7 of them are investigators. And then we have a policy outreach unit, and then there's a management team that keeps everything moving on a daily basis. And in the summer of 2020, I read in the newspaper that council was thinking about putting something on the ballot to change the accountability system in the city of Portland, and that came out of the blue to me. We were working diligently and in a very committed way to get into compliance with the settlement agreement. At that time, you all will remember that there were street protests every night of that summer. And so I was quite confused by why we were talking about putting something on the ballot to change the accountability system, because we were also involved in a settlement agreement with the federal government. And so it was, to me, quite a confusing message to be sending from the city of Portland. I inquired about what the thinking was, who was involved in those conversations, and was told that there really hadn't been conversations in the city of Portland, and that Commissioner Hardesty had started that ball rolling during the protests. And as you all know, the city council referred to the ballot a measure to change the accountability system. It was overwhelmingly passed in November of 2020. And the word then was that it would take 18 months to get that board up and running. And so I immediately began preparing for my responsibilities of supervising independent police review to end by June, the end of June of 2022. So that would be 18 months. They were going to seat a commission to develop the concept of the board. And that was the part that was supposed to take 18 months. So I did quite a bit of reorganizing of my office. We had some vacancies in independent police review. I sent deputy ombudsman down to help independent police review. We reorganized some of our administrative staff so that we could hold IPR together for 18 months. And along the way, I pitched ideas to council because I thought it was imperative that the city hang on to the people in independent police review. They are, despite what you have heard, they are experts at what they do. They are operating as investigators within the bounds of employment law for the state of Oregon and the federal law. And then they also operate within the Portland Police Association contract and the protections that are in place in that contract for police officers who are alleged to have engaged in misconduct. So it was really imperative that the city keep them. And I was afraid that they would start looking for other jobs and then we would be faced with having to fill positions in a division that was going out of business. And the reason it was going out of business is because Commissioner Hardesty made it known that those employees would not be transferred over to the new oversight board. And that is an unfortunate thing that occurred at the beginning of this whole process. And it is really why we're scrambling now to come up with good solutions for this period of time from when we need IPR and the employees who do the work there until the new board is up and running. And that now I've learned, having gone through several legal hearings and mediations, is not going to happen anytime soon. And that the predictions were that it would be 4 or 5 years before the new board would be ready, if that. And there are a lot of decision points along the way built into the process where the committee had to be seated. And rather than that being January of 2021, they just got seated in December. And so they were almost a year late getting started. Then there was talk of the Portland Police Association appealing certain decisions that were being made by the court or that needed to be mediated, and I think that has been pushed off down the road a little bit. But they could come back at any point, and any of the parties could appeal. Council may not approve what the board, what the committee that's forming the board wants to do. I mean, there's so many pitfalls that have to be overcome going forward, and so it just seemed to me that I could not continue keeping independent police review for 5 years and under the conditions that we were running it out of the auditor's office. And so in charter, I have the authority to decide not to have something in the auditor's office if it's not part of our charter mandated responsibilities. And so I withdrew my consent to keep independent police review. I have transferred the risk of failure back to the city council and told them that they needed to come up with a plan to keep the employees in independent police review in their chairs, working, hopefully staying. And I know that they are working on that. I've seen a plan as of this week that they have put forward to try to do that. And so that is the somewhat chronological history of the decision that I made and where we are today. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, City Auditor. I meant to change my name here. I do have some questions about this because have been somewhat confused by who does what. What is the responsibility of the IPR? What is the responsibility of PCCEP? What is the responsibility of the new Police Accountability Commission? And what's going to happen in that gap period where there might not be anyone doing, or when you release the, I guess, the relationship with the IPR back to the city council, is there going to be any gaps that we should be concerned about? And so that's probably a loaded question. And one is just more of understanding, does everyone play a part, or is there a part where one will phase out while another one comes in? I guess that's what I'm concerned about.
I share your concern. So let me back up a little bit and talk about independent police review. Sorry, I jumped ahead and assumed that you all understood their role. So independent police review is in the auditor's office. It lives outside of the police bureau, and it is non-police personnel who are the central intake point when community members have complaints of misconduct about a police officer. And so they do the intake process with the complainant. They do preliminary investigative fact gathering kinds of steps. They also can conduct their own investigations. They work side by side essentially with the internal affairs unit, which is inside the police bureau. They also have an investigative responsibility. And what we've done is we take certain kinds of cases, and the internal affairs investigators take a different kind of case based on what type of complaint it is. And so we are the only entity, the civilian oversight entity in the city of Portland's police accountability system. And so your concern about there may come a time when there is not civilian oversight of police is a valid one. It is the one that I have been talking about for 2 years without much on the other side of that question. I think now all council's responsibility, there may be some better action than I've seen in the last couple of years. I hope so. And I also want to emphasize how impressed I am with the employees of Independent Police Review today. I saw Paul in the chat, want to know if they exist today. They do. There are 14 employees. And they have been remarkably committed so far. They're watching closely. There's one in this meeting tonight. They watch closely what decisions are being made about them, because they have unfortunately been quite on the sidelines as everybody talks about them. Everybody misrepresents what they do. They talk horribly about them as human beings and as city employees. And I am surprised that they are all still here today. And I hope that continues, but things need to be done to make sure that happens.
Yes, I appreciate that. And thank you for answering Tia Palafox's question. And also, I don't want to pronounce your name incorrectly, but David Nguyen, I believe you shared that you also work for IPR and you're here today. I'm going to call on Jared Hager, who has a question.
Thank you, Zainab. And I wasn't going to ask a question, but I did want to make something clear. And I appreciated yours and the auditor's concern that there may be a risk to civilian oversight. And I just want to say, from the department's perspective, the Department of Justice, we have a federal court order that guarantees that there will be civilian oversight in Portland. And so, while we appreciate the concern, we do have remedies if there is a gap, and including unleashing the equitable power of the federal court to ensure that we have civilian oversight. And so while there is some turmoil and transition going on, it is a guarantee from that court order, and we're prepared to enforce it.
Thank you for sharing that, Jared, on behalf of the U.S. Department of Justice. Are there any, I see this statement. Oh, that's Jonas. Did you want me to read this statement, or Jonas, did you want to read it yourself?
No, ma'am, I just wanted to let you all know that there's a
Okay.
provision in the settlement agreement there, and that's for everybody to read if they want to.
Yes, and so I'll read it to those who are viewing us. This agreement, as Jonas Geisler presents, is binding upon all parties here too, by and through their officials, agents, employees, and successors. If the city establishes or reorganizes a government agency or entity whose function includes overseeing, regulating, accrediting, investigating, or otherwise reviewing the operations of PPB or any aspect thereof, the city agrees to ensure these functions and entities are consistent with the terms of this agreement and shall incorporate the terms of this agreement into the oversight, regulatory, accreditation, investigation, or review function of the government agency or entity as necessary to ensure consistency. So thank you for sharing that too, because I think it's really important for those who are joining us, for the first time, for those who've been around for the I would say 10 plus years, there is a level of not just concern, but recognizing that there were 300,000 plus voters who also spoke, and I think that's considered community engagement. They spoke up, spoke loud through voting, and shared that they wanted to see police oversight. And so, city auditor, one of the reasons why I think I shared with you why I brought you back, because a year ago, almost a year ago, May 2021, it kind of went over my head, and it was Vadim Mazurski who actually had you come to our last SAP meeting and engaged in the question, or the statement you had was, you didn't really see it being successful. And a year later, with what's going on now, I can only imagine you continue to feel the same way. And so I guess we have Dr. Leroy Haynes here, who has been here. And I want to just reach to you first before others. So if everyone could bear with me, because I know you may have some thoughts about what's happening, especially with the police oversight, because I know that is something that you have been focusing on through AMAC. Thank you. I'm gonna ask you to unmute yourself. So thank you.
For 2 decades, AMAC, and I'm talking about before the auditor ever came on board or became aware of what was going on. The Obama Minister Alliance Coalition for Justice and Police Reform, one of its major demands following the Kendra James case in 2003 was to have an independent oversight board that would compel testimony from police officers. So conversations were going on in the community 20 years ago, and because it was one of the major demands of the AMAC at that time. And AMAC continued representing over 25 different community organizations, and as well as the Minister Alliance on this issue. We thank the auditor for a well done job, and the also the investigators, but there are strengths and weaknesses in IPR, and one of the reasons why 82% of the public voted in favor, because they understood very clearly that there were gaps and a lack of legal authority and other issues that were within IPR, as well as issues of follow through on complaints by the public, and that's well documented through many different committee meetings and everything. But we need an independent police board, and that's why the citizens spoke very clearly and declared very clearly. And even though there are anti-democratic forces in the city that want to turn back what the citizens of this city have proposed and voted for, And so we, for 20 years, AMAC has been supporting this issue and continue to support it, and look forward towards whatever is needed to make it happen.
Thank you, Dr. Haynes. And just for those of you who don't know what AMAC stands for, it's the Albina Ministerial Alliance Council. Is that correct?
No, Coalition for Justice.
Coalition, excuse me, coalition. Thank you. And it was focusing on justice reform. And so, as you said, 2 decades, that's 20 years ago, for those of us who cannot count what 2 decades are, 20 years ago. AMAC has been focusing on the issue of policing, police oversight, especially since 2003, as you shared with the case with Kendra James. And so I hear a lot of concerns from the city auditor, especially with the fact that there have been staff or people who have been doing this for a while, doing investigations. And so how do you recognize their work? And also, is it possible to, I won't say retrain, but get them to also be a part of a newer system? Is that possible? And anyone can answer this question. I just don't know if it's possible to have people who've done something one way and then have them look to do something totally different. And that calls for training or reinvesting resources to provide the support needed to get to that space. But my biggest concern right now is that I know the Police Accountability Commission is just getting started. And they're getting started to do what again? Are they getting started to be the investigators, or are they getting started to just put the system in place? Let's figure that out. What's going on with that?
My understanding that was built into the system very clearly once the ballot measured that would be a process. We had to go to the state legislature to get certain changes in order for this particular kind of board to take place. We also had to in turn go to negotiations with the union on many items, but it was built in that there would not be an automatically quick transitional period there. And because the issues also deal with the not only the history of oversight system in the city of Portland. I was one of the persons that, along with the MA Coalition, that created IPR. Yeah, and we knew that there were some weaknesses and that take place. Take for example, is very rarely mentioned that they cannot investigate police shootings except after a period of time to take place. You know, and one of the main demands of the community here, one of the main demands of the George Floyd movement is that when someone dies at the hand of the police, that there are clearly and quick investigations that take place. IPR doesn't have that authority.
Well, you know what, Dr. Haynes, and I'm glad that you shared it. And I don't want this conversation just between you and me and probably Mary up here, but I'm glad you brought up the fact of the time frame, how long it takes to actually do investigative work. I've seen many different time frames, but I've also seen in reports that it's been a lot longer than what was introduced in the settlement agreement. And maybe DOJ, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a certain like maybe 20 to 45 days, but it's gone beyond that. And also, how does what's happening, like what the PAC is doing now, are they planning on doing it differently, or like how different will it be when it comes to the investigation process, and what kind of leverage would they have different than what the city auditor has today? And then Sarah will have you come up next for your question or statement. Thanks.
Zainab, was that a question to me about the new Police Accountability Commission? Because, you know, I'll just say the timeline to create that commission and the new oversight mechanism did a part. Imitation is the highest form of flattery. We adopted what the voters chose here as our remedy for accountability for the failures of the police bureau in 2020. And so that's what paragraph 195 is in the settlement agreement. It is trying to codify that as a federal obligation, but we don't know what it is yet because the Accountability Commission, and I see Debbie Iona's here, she's on the PAC. They're going to do their work and make their proposal up to city council. And we don't know. I mean, it's going to be an organic process. The 82%, like you said, voted for it. And so we were willing to adopt that as a way to fix some of the accountability problems we saw with the current structure where, you know, the chief is deciding discipline and you have civilian oversight investigations that are limited by the lack of subpoena power. I believe that's one of the fixes of the new legislation. And the ability to review officer involved shootings and a host of other things that I think the Accountability Commission is going to decide the scope. But and maybe Sarah knows. I mean, I'm out of my lane here. We hope it becomes a remedy, but that is for the fairness hearing, April 29th. You know, come and be heard in court. I'll give that plug, and with that, I'll pass it to Sarah.
Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate Dr. Haynes's comments, and the city very much wants to honor the commitment made to those hundreds of thousands of voters and to follow through and to design a police accountability system through the PAC. And it's all being driven by the Citizen Police Accountability Commission, which has 20 seats on it, including Debbie, as Jared mentioned. And we need to do that within the bounds of the settlement agreement. We have the authority to revise, but we have to have a rigorous police accountability system on that. And so keeping in honor to our commitments, the federal government and the commitment to the voters, the Police Accountability Commission has the authority to design that system and to propose it. And they have been working on their foundational items, getting their ground rules, how they work with each other, how they engage the community, their bylaws. They're wrapping that up this month. Then they have a phased approach. They're adopting a phased approach of how they're tackling the task of building a police accountability system. And I want to echo what the auditor said, that, you know, and I think also Dr. Haynes mentioned, you know, there was some work done to get legislation so that they have better state law within which to do their work. There was work done at the bargaining table with the police union to get a new discipline guide in place that supports that effort. So some of that foundational work happened before, even as the commission members were being appointed and started meeting in December. The anticipation from the council is that they have 18 months from the time they started meeting to get their work done. And, you know, there's a lot of pieces to do it. And we want to make sure it's a structure that's set up for the people in it to be successful and to deliver the justice that the community is asking for, and the accountability and the fairness to the police officers involved in the system. I mean, there's obligations as an employer to, you know, really investigate and do things properly as well. So there's a whole bunch as state laws, bargaining laws, you know, all these things that all have to come together and shape the direction of the work. And I don't think, you know, I think the auditor said there's some very good people working in them, and people have to understand that they are working within the bounds of the current structure. And now we have an opportunity to look at what the next structure is going to be that might deliver better results in the eyes of the community. So we have a great opportunity now. And I would encourage, you know, as I said, they're still in the foundational phase at the Police Accountability Commission. And now I encourage anybody to come to the public meetings. You can come and check out what their conversations are and weigh in as well.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing that. And before I call on you, Gloria, there's something that you said, Sarah, that I'm also understanding where Mary is coming from, the auditor, city auditor is coming from when it comes to that gap that you're going to see, because we know that the PAC, I'm just going to say PAC, it's just easier for me to say that. But the PAC was just started December of last year, starting to meet. And so 18 months from there is not July 1st of 2022. And so how likely will they be completed in their process of setting up a new system to do oversight before the IPR is transitioned back to the city council? And if it's transitioned back to the city council, will the city council now have oversight of the IPR until the new system is up and operating? Just a question. Thank you.
Oh, sure, we can deal with that. We have, as the auditor mentioned, we have developed a plan and now we have to operationalize it to make IPR an independent city agency that does not, giving them a lot of independence from any individual council members. So it's going to be a little bit of a different system than we usually see, because I think it was very important to the city that, you know, one of the reasons they were in the auditor's office is the auditor has such a degree of autonomy from the city council's day-to-day management and oversight, right? I mean, you know, and that's all in statute and the city charter. But and so when she said that she could not tenably, you know, continue this for the period that she believes it will take to get the new system up and running, and that is a concern, you know, how to keep these employees, you know, engaged and working and keep the system running until the new system is going to take place. You know, that is a concern that the city shares with the auditor, and you know, we're working closely with the staff. Some of the staff are represented, and so any kind of plans for them, we have to negotiate with their union. So there's a lot of, you know, as ever, things get complicated when you get into the details. And so we're trying to carry out the will of the people and get that going as quickly as responsibly as possible. I don't know if that answered your question, but
somewhat, but thank you. Yeah, somewhat. Thank you, Sarah. I just know that, you know, transparency is one thing I know the city struggles with. And so hopefully you're more transparent in this process and sharing how this is going to really happen, because it's still a gap. There's still a gap, and I'm hearing it. I'm not visualizing how there's going to be able to fill it in between the time that she relinquishes her oversight into the new. And so again, I don't want to use this time and space, but just hopefully the city thinks about that and how they're going to share that with the community, just so that they are very transparent to build that trust, to continue to focus on police oversight. Gloria, you have a question or statement or concern? Thank you.
Can't hear you.
Okay. Remember in 2004 when Jabbar Perez, Kendra James were killed, and they were talking about the investigation. Now that was in 2004 that was going to happen. And that was at the time that we had, I think Derek Fox was the chief, and he was saying that he didn't want it to turn into an inquest because he didn't know what an investigation would do. And he didn't want to paint the picture that police officers after shootings were guilty before it even started. Some of that same kind of stuff I'm hearing. It was 2004 when they talked about the inquest, and you were involved in that. 2004. Here we are in 2022, and we're saying it's going to take a good 5 years to get IPR off the ground and running. I think we're going to lose a lot of young people between now and 5 years. And I hate to say that.
You've said it, Gloria. And Dr. Haynes, thank you.
My response to that, my sister, you're very kind. I was one of the leaders, mother pastors the inquest was called by the mayor at that time, and we met and negotiated with the district attorney office, and that is how that inquest took place with the bar shooting. But you're very well correct on that. I wish we could make the transition, within a year or within 6 months. I wouldn't have been working on this thing for 20 years if that. And it takes that kind of effort. It takes a movement to bring about the transformation, just like what's happening with George Floyd and on the national level, and dealing with the Congress and dealing with those kind of things, but we who believe in freedom, justice, and equality, and believe that human beings are human beings, whether they're black, white, brown, or red, we continue to push forward the ideas of Dr. Martin Luther King and hold the city accountable and all of the agencies in the city accountable for justice in the carrying out of police in our community. So I'm frustrated with that, but I haven't given up in 20 years. Okay, I'm continuing to fight for it.
And thank you for that, Dr. Haynes, because you remind me of the song from Sweet Honey in the Rock. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. And it's unfortunately that you have not been able to rest in this time frame, especially in dealing with the city police bureau is a small unit. It's a small unit, but it's taken many people, including 300,000 people, to say, hey, let's have oversight. It's taking a lot of time, like you said, 2 decades to see a process be put in place that really actually makes this a actual process that is functional. I'll just say that. I want to share, because I know that we said we would talk about this until 6:45. Mary Ho Caballero, as a city auditor, do you have anything that you'd like to share before we move on to another conversation topic? But again, we're talking about the 10-year progress report. So whatever you like to share at this moment. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to let you know what we're going to do between now and July the 1st. Like I said, we got a plan on Tuesday, and Sarah is correct. It's still very, very high level. And my office is going to be working closely with whoever the people are on the other side of the table. And I've been obnoxious about demanding that we know who those people are, because we are good at operationalizing things. We know how to do that. We're very efficient. We're very detail-oriented people. And we are going to make sure that all of the things on our to-do list are checked off before IPR leaves my office. And we are committed to that, because if the support system is not in place that they enjoy in the auditor's office, then it will be incredibly difficult for that unit to deliver on the responsibilities to the settlement agreement. And they're, through the remedies that were just passed by City Council, they have taken on quite a large responsibility for an investigation that stems from the protests. And it is imperative that the city provide them the support they need, that they are protected from any sort of interference. And that is my personal concern, is that they are situated appropriately inside the organization of the city, so that they can do their jobs, that they can gather the facts that they need, that they can go where those facts take them, and that there's no interference from anybody in the city about that. And so I think that I've made that known. Everybody in the city knows I feel strongly about those things. And so we're really committed in doing that, but we do need to get moving. June 30 is going to be here very quickly, and the city generally move quickly. So we're pushing from the inside to get those things defined.
Well, thank you so much, City Auditor. I do want to read a couple of things that were put in the chat from Jonas. He shared, if the question is the time to investigate allegation of misconduct, the settlement agreement gives 180 days to investigations of allegations of misconduct. Investigation, he says, time frame, 121, PPB in the city shall complete all administrative investigations of officer misconduct within 180 days of receipt of a complaint of misconduct or discovery of misconduct by other means. For the purposes of this provision, completion of administrative investigations includes all steps from intake of allegations through approval of recommended findings by the chief, excluding appeals, if any, to CRC. Appeals to CRC, the Citizen Review Committee should be dissolved within 90 days. And then we had a statement from Debbie Iona, who's part of the PAC. We had a different oversight system that came before IPR. It was called the Police Internal Investigations Auditing Committee. The city managed to transition between the system and IPR. So I just wanted to make sure that we shared those statements. And again, thank you, City Auditor, for bringing this, coming back to our meeting. I would say, again, as I am new to this whole process. So I told, I think it was Dan, I don't have nothing new to share. I'm bringing everybody's information that who's been a part of this. It's not for me to bring anything new because you've all been working at this. I'm just hoping that this space here for the settlement agreement and policy subcommittee can be that space that we talk about where are we now? How have we progressed so far? And what work do we need to do to really be in substantial compliance? In addition to making real reform and real change when it comes to constitutional policing and the harm that it does to the community, especially communities of color. So thank you again. And we hope to just, as you're transitioning, if there's anything that you want to bring back to us with any updates as you see our concerns, please let us know. You're invited to come back to our meeting. And I also heard you say that this could be your last year. So I hope that the city recognizes your commitment over the past 8 years that you've been working with the city and with the city auditors. And also Dr. Haynes, for you sharing that you were part of making that a reality. I think this is a great way to really just share how far PCCEP has come. Not PCCEP, but just the whole settlement agreement, but with PCCEP's work as well. So thank you again. No problem. Doctor, I'm not sure if people want to take, I'm not good at taking breaks. So if anyone needs to take a 5-minute break, we could take a 5-minute break before we move into the next session. And that's going to be with Dr. Haynes. And he has brought some folks here to also talk and share about their, their legacy, some of the progress reports that they could probably give us about where they see things are happening. And just continue this conversation about, how do we get to what the vision or what the thought was that we were going to get to 10 years ago or 20 years ago, as Dr. Haynes talked about. So do we need a 5-minute break?
I don't.
Say?
I don't.
Everyone looks refreshed, so I can keep going. And so let's transition, and I'm gonna put it on the screen real quick so that everyone sees where we are now when it comes to the discussion. The settlement agreement 10 years progress report, part 1. The Albina Ministerial Alliance Council, AMAC, for Justice and Police Reform. We have Dr. Leroy Haynes. We also have the attorney, J. Ashley Albies, and we also have some other special guests, and I'm hoping that they'll speak up and speak out about what they see as any progress or any concerns with the settlement agreement at this time. Thank you. Dr. Haynes?
Yes, first of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share. We are usually part of a PCCEP training for new members to come in because it's a whole lot to digest. in particular, how do we get here and the historical context. I find that often if we don't understand the context that things develop, we can have a false misinterpretation of what really happened. I'm gonna start off, and then if Ashley is on, she'll pick up, and then Dr. Knudsen. The Abana Ministerial Alliance is over 70 years old. It's one of the largest ecumenical bodies in the city of Portland. AMA is composed of over 100 churches of various denomination, non-denomination. It originally encompassed the old Abana community, traditionally included the North and Northeast Portland, but has expanded over the years to include churches throughout the city of Portland and Greater Portland. AMAC has been a major voice for the African American community in providing social service, education, religious traditions, and social justice advocates, the AMA. It was through AMA that the coalition was formed that include community, civic organization, civil rights organization, and social justice activists. As chairperson of the Abana Ministerial Alliance Coalition for Justice and Police Reform, a coalition that has consistently advocated for police reform in the Portland Police Bureau and justice in the criminal justice system for the last 20 so years. The Abana Ministerial Alliance Coalition was formed out of 25 coalition partners in response to the killing of an African-American female named Kendra James in 2003. Over 5,000 members of the Portland community of diverse faith, ages, and race united together to call for justice. It was at that time that the community leaders and community organizations, labor and faith houses, and activists felt a need to create a broad-based grassroots coalition to address the issue of police using excessive and deadly force and justice against members of the Portland community, particularly the Black and Brown and mentally ill. The Abana Ministerial Alliance Coalition focused on 5 major goals: a federal investigation of by the Justice Department to include criminal and civil rights violation, as well as not just an investigation, but a federal audit. A federal audit takes in account of the whole from Portland Police Bureau, from the recruitment to the fiscal to the all aspects of the Bureau itself. 2, we call for an Indian Police Review Board that was citizen-driven with the goal of adding the power of compelling testimony. Now, this is 2003. I want you to remember that. Okay. 3, a full review of the Bureau excessive force and deadly force policies and training with diverse citizens' participation for the purpose of making recommendation and changing the policy and training. 4, to lobby state legislature to narrow the language of state statute for deadly force used by police officers. And 5, which we're still working on, to establish a special prosecutor for all excessive deadly force cases by police. The Abana Ministerial Alliance Coalition was either the lead advocate or the supportive advocate in a variety of excessive force and deadly cases, as James Jahar Perez that was mentioned in 2004, James Chassie in 2006, a 12-year-old girl, beanbag shooting at TriMet 2009, and Aaron Campbell in 2010, Keaton Otis in 2010, and we can go on and on. It was during following the killing of an unarmed African-American male in distress over the death of his brother that Aaron Campbell was killed by a Portland police officer sniper by the name of Frashour in January 29, 2010. The mass demonstrations broke out in different communities throughout the city of Portland, and that both the Abana Minister Alliance coalitions and council members and Mayor Sam Adams called for a federal investigation of the Aaron Campbell case. But the AMA coalition went a step further and called for an audit by the Justice Department. AMA coalition sent a request to the Department of Justice with the endorsement of our two congressional senators, asking for a federal audit of the Portland Police Bureau patterns and practices in the use of excessive and deadly force against communities of color and the mentally ill and citizens in the city of Portland. Later, Mayor Adams and Commissioner Dan Salzman endorsed a call for the audit of the Portland Police Bureau. In the spring of 2011, the Department of Justice came back with a report on the Campbell case stating that it found no wrongdoing by the Portland police officers. However, in June 8, 2011, the Department of Justice announced it would conduct an audit in the patterns and practices of the Portland Police Bureau. During the summer of 2011, the Department of Justice started interviewing community members as well as the Portland Police Bureau, community organization, lawyers, city officials. On September the 13th, 2012, the Department of Justice issued a letter of finding saying that the patterns and practices of excessive force is used against people with mental illness are perceived to be mentally ill. In November of 2012, the City Council passed an amended settlement agreement. In January of 2013, Judge Michael Simon allowed the Portland Police Bureau, PPA, to be a party of the lawsuit filed by the Department of Justice and created a new status and legal precedence by giving the AMA coalition the status of enhanced amicus, which allowed the coalition as a community organization to be a limited party in the mediation of the settlement agreement. In July 2013, the City Council accepted the Abana Ministerial Alliance Coalition, a collaborative agreement outlining AMA coalition participating in the implementation of the settlement agreement. In February of 2014, Judge Simon conducted a fairness hearing where over 70 persons gave testimony from all walks of life. In August of 2014, Judge Michael Simon entered this settlement agreement into record and called for an annual periodic hearing. In October of 2014, the City Council announced its intention to appeal the periodic hearing that was set by Judge Michael Simon. Now, that is the historical context that brought forth what we call today the settlement agreement. Now, in this settlement agreement, all parties, the city, PPA, and the amicus, along with DOJ, mediate an agreement between the different parties. Later on, the Mental Health Association was called in to be a part of the amicus, But the settlement agreement is different than what we call the other agreements that have taken place throughout the country, where there's a court administrative that is set up a monitor, and that did not take place in the settlement agreement. That's why we created COCO and later PCCEP and the other entities that developed. And so when we look back over the scheme of things, there has been progress made in policies, changing the de-escalation of and the training. There's been policy. In fact, over 82 policy demands were presented by the AMA Coalition for Justice. A great many have been implemented, a lot of them have. But we're at the point right now in the settlement agreement where AMA is considering the possibility of requesting for a administrative monitor by the court under Michael Simon to implement this agreement, because we have been seeing failure after failure in the implementation process. And after a while, we began to question whether it's going to be actually fully implemented without having a federal court administrator. So that's where we are right now.
You know, Dr. Haynes, I want to say thank you for just sharing all of the background. I actually did take the training with PCCEP when I first joined. I'm not sure if other members were privy to the training with you, but at that time, it really was, I remember Joyce Harris providing a list of who've, been harmed. And it was just more information that really helps you understand what's been going on. Now, you went up to 2014. We're now at 2022. And we know in those 8 years, a lot more stuff has gone. I'm not sure, just don't count the years, but in those years, a lot more has happened and hasn't happened. More harm has happened. And we haven't seen a lot of change when it comes to policing and constitutional policing. And I want to get to this point, but I know we're limited of time. So we're at 7:12. I am so glad that we're going to be bringing you back next month. And so we could continue this conversation, because I know you just gave us the foundation, the legacy, the understanding of how do we get here? And hopefully we can have this conversation about where we're going, where are we going from now? In April, Jared, you mentioned April 29th is the fairness hearing. And that's another added on layer of different things that I know, the remedies and the body worn cameras and everything else that's been going on. And then I know most people know about PCCEP is now in a transition stage. I'll just put it that way. We're in transition. Mike Myers, he's going to be making more announcement about how that's going to transition over the next 60 days. And I know that you have people here like Reverend Dr. Mark Knudsen. I want to make sure I got that right. Knudsen. And Ashley Albies, the attorney. And I think he's gone now, but and Pastor Councilman Robin Weisner. I just want to make sure that you also will join us next month, so that we can continue on in understanding and providing the community more awareness, and also your thoughts about where we are today. Each of you have been a part of this for so long, including the DOJ, including the city, including COCO, including a lot of different members of the stakeholders. And so I think this is a great space to really see what has been done that has really set basically set a play for us to really know that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, and we're doing the right things, right? Many times we see things like, these type of cases, and 10 years go by, 20 years go by, then it just gets pushed on the shelf and no one really cares. And I know that from everyone's commitment over this time, I know we want to see difference. We want to see a change. So I just hope that, as people begin to look at the 10 years, over the 10 years, it's really important to really think back on what's going on, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what's a good best practice, what's not a good best practice, and how can we really get the city to be accountable for not only the police, but also for the policies that they put in place. And so this moves around a lot. Dr. Knudsen, did you have anything that you want to share?
So Ashley, did you want to go first for a couple minutes?
Thanks.
I think Dr. Haynes covered the timeline pretty well, really quickly with regard to the agreement. And thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate the discussion and the review so far. I think there's a couple things that this agreement has been in place or in the works, right, for 10 years, plus 10 years at this point. And throughout that time, there have been gains. One of the demands that Dr. Haynes mentioned that the AMAC had been pushing for and the community had been pushing for many years was the elimination of the 48-hour rule, which was a huge issue with regard to the shooting of Kendra James, which allowed under the Portland Police Association contract, union contract with the city, officers 48 hours before they had to give a statement about the incident to investigators. And despite pushing for that for many, many years, it took quite some time for that to be removed from the Portland Police Association contract. And even now, there's a term in the Portland Police Association contract that allows for IPR to not be able to compel testimony of officers, right? And so the community has long held and had the position that these are barriers to police accountability and therefore an issue with public safety and a barrier to public safety, effective public safety. Part of public safety is holding police officers accountable for violations of policy, for taking lives unconstitutionally. And it's important to note that the city has never terminated an officer effectively. That was withheld by through all the appeals process for taking another person's life for an officer-involved shooting. And that is significant. And that it has a tremendous bearing on community trust. And that is something that is thematically right throughout looking at the names and the stories of people whose lives have been taken through officer-involved shootings. They're disproportionately Black, they're disproportionately people of color, and they're disproportionately people in mental health crisis. And so part of, I think, community frustration, which led to the new oversight board, was that very fact that folks in the community did not feel that accountability was effective in holding officers accountable for the most significant action they can take of taking someone's life. So I just kind of name that, and the issue of body worn cameras is still something that is quite present and has come up throughout the fairness hearings. The way that the settlement agreement works is that Judge Michael Simon oversees the cases pending before him. He conducts fairness hearings when there is changes to the agreement, like there will be at the end of April. And he has taken a lot of effort to open up his courtroom to community members and making them feel welcome to share their perspectives and their thoughts on this settlement agreement. And that is in part why the idea of a court monitor, which is answerable to the judge and to the court, rather than to the parties, rather than the Department of Justice, rather than the COCO, that is something that the AMAC has been contemplating because of it's a direct line to the court rather than amongst the parties to then trigger a conversation or bringing something in front of the court to exercise the court's power. So with that, I'll turn it over to Pastor Knudsen, and I appreciate everybody's engagement tonight.
And I'll keep my remarks short. I know the next month meeting, if we could go sooner because it's a Holy Week, and I'll have a Monday, Thursday service. I'll be in robes for the next meeting, and I'll rush into the service. But I've got a longer piece to share, but I'll be very succinct for a couple minutes tonight. And as clergy, we actually know how to keep the time limits of 3 or 4 minutes when we're asked. So I will do that. Let me just say, I've been at this a long time, and when we talk about pandemics, of course, COVID-19, white supremacy, systemic racism, which undergirds a lot of the policing in America, the environmental crisis, which our young people are so concerned about, and all of us, gun violence. I'm a co-chair or chief petitioner for Lift Every Voice Oregon for 2 ballot initiatives. They're going to address that. I can go on the refugee crisis in the world. Yes, we pray for Ukraine tonight, and then we think of all the refugees in other countries who had escaped violence as well, and how we address that. So we have 6, 7 pandemics to address, and police reform is in the midst of that. And these are not unrelated issues. Let me be very clear. These are not unrelated issues. They're interwoven. And so as we think of police reform, and I spent 8 years as the national director for youth ministries for Lutheran Church for youth and young adult ministries and peace and justice, equity, inclusion reform. And I left Portland to go do that, came back to Portland 26 years ago, joined the AMA when I met Dr. Haynes, met Dr. Bethel, Dr. Weisner, Bishop Wells. I can start naming some greats, Reverend Alcina Boozer. And we've been about this nonstop to weave a just community peacekeeping, if you will. What we'll call community policing. That's the terminology, but peacekeeping that engages the community. And so community trust has been at the heart of what we've been about these last 25 years together. And I joined the AMA because the Black church has always been a leader for justice in this country. And to walk with my colleagues was important. I come from a very diverse family from Northeast and Southeast Portland too. 26 nieces and nephews, 16 are of African-American descent, including my wife and my son. So this issue is both community, but it's also personal. I've checked taillights before he drove the car from 27th off going downtown to see his friends, as you all know what that's like. So for us, it's a big picture, and we need intentional incremental change, and that's what this has been about. These with the settlement agreement, very important changes. But I hope, you know, as PCEP members, that we so value your work, because I know the time you're putting into this. You're putting a lot of time. So I honor and respect you and thank you, because you're doing it on behalf of the whole community. But step back, you know, that sense of transformational change, that's what we have to be looking at as well. And so when we talk about police reform and the 49 demands we put together 20 years ago and brought before the city as AMAC, we need to look at the big picture. What does our police department look like in 5 years from now? Does it reflect the birth rate of this state, which is a BIPOC majority? Does it reflect what we should look like in 20 years, 10 years in advance? And that's important. So recruitment's the area I'll address next week, or a month from now, because we are in an opportune moment. You know, I read the headline, aggressive recruitment, hiring critical for the police bureau. Let's not just have them run out and do that. Let's talk about reforming the culture of policing in this city and what we want that to look like. That could be a model for the nation. And then let's all of us work to say we need a recruitment team that's diverse, that's going to look at college campus officers who don't carry guns. They can sell, bring, de-escalate things. Where are we looking? If we're only going after people from former military, and many are, I'm not critiquing them. But if you have people in another land fighting people of color, what does that say when you come back and take on a job in Portland and 80% of outside the city? We need to address that, because otherwise you're going into a zone to patrol rather than to go walk the streets and be in the community. I don't want to critique. I just want to say we need to think about these things as we move forward. So big picture, if you take a beautiful mural on a wall, one of our artists, you know, might paint in this city, and you say, we've painted this piece, but here's the vision for what we need. And now how do we paint the next pieces that make this one of the most livable cities where there's trust, again, accountability for the community. And as faith leaders, we come at this from values that say, you know, equity, justice, inclusion, diversity is pure gift, peace. How do we approach it in that light? So I'll stop. Thank you for letting me take a moment. My colleagues gave beautiful renditions, so I can stop there and enjoy what you're all doing. And I do want to say Dr. Haynes and I both were on the steering committee for the Community Police Oversight Board that won by 82%. And that was a board that reflected the city, the way it looks and needs to look, and the state and this nation. And so 82% was a great victory, the biggest in Portland history. And that was, as Dr. Haynes so clearly said, 25 years in the making, if not farther back in the various places we worked. So it wasn't just a sudden spur of the moment. It was a Kairos moment because of the George Floyd murder that opened this nation up to think differently. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Ashley, thank you. Dr. Knudsen, Reverend Dr. Knudsen, thank you as well. Pastor Wiseman, did you want to share anything before? Okay.
Yes, and I'm gonna make mine what they say, pictures is worth 1,000 words. If you see closely here, and I'm not sure if you can, but this is the original group of the Albino Ministerial Alliance. Let's see if we can get that to focus a little. You have here the group when we first started. This is, if you can see that here, I don't know if you can see it very well. This is where we went to legislation. We have here Bishop A. Wells, Dr. Haynes with an afro, myself, Pastor Hardy, and I have just a few more things just so that others can see. We're looking at a frame of just 20 years of what the settlement agreement. But as Pastor Haynes has given a great history, we start back even further with Byron Hammock, as well as others who was unjustly, Senor Mejia Poot, who was shot and killed, with assuming that he had the mental illness and was put into a mental ward and killed for 20 cents. Myself, the history goes as where that I was with the Portland Police Crisis Response, who actually in each one of these shootings was with the body when it was and presented the actual information to the family of their loved ones who had been shot and killed by the Portland police. So there is a lot that I say that it looks like we've gotten here by a sprint, but it's been a marathon. I would have to say we've still got a long ways to go, and the history of what I see here with this young people, these young minds, continue the effort because I asked Dr. Haynes a few questions, but he never gives me the answer. I say, "How old are you, Dr. Haynes?" And he laughs at me because I cannot keep up with this history, but that has been through the civil rights, Black Panther, and I've been doing this at least 30 years. And again, the history I have, if anyone ever want to see the pictures of where we've been to where we are, I do have that. And you can see Dr. Haynes with afro. Big as mine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I hope that we can get that scanned in or get it on a PowerPoint so we can share at the next meeting, because I love the fact that we have this history and the legacy, and each of you are here to share it too. I mean, it's really impactful. And so, I know I'm a person who likes to be on time because I know I want to, make sure that everyone else in, meeting your time frame, and we said we'll end at 7:30. But I hope that this conversation today is really impactful for us to really figure out, like, where are we headed? As a person who lived in Portland, I left. I just left. I'll just put it that way. But before I left, there was stuff that was going on in our community that wasn't being addressed. And the fact that, this started in 2003, according to Dr. Haynes' legacy and information, into where we are 20 years later, and we're still seeing a lot of just a lot of trouble. And like Dr. Knudsen said, it all is related to everything when it comes to the violence that we see around the world. And I'm hoping that, as we continue to have these conversations, we can really shape what you really want to see this settlement agreement go when it comes to, I say, substantial compliance. I love that word, substantial compliance, and being able to meet that. And also not just that, to actually the actions be really meaningful. Like you said, about the change and how we even recruit police officers and what they do in our communities. And if they're going to be peace officers, really be of that mindset. So thank you all for being here today. We look forward to you being at the next meeting. Let me put my slide up so that it's visual for everyone. Ooh, okay. So our next meeting is Thursday, April 14th. 6 p.m. we'll start the settlement agreement progress report part 2. We'll be hopefully talking more about the court compliance and the fairness hearing court date as we prepare for that, and our testimony of those of you who are testifying. And we'll have Dr. Leroy Haynes and Jay Ashley Albies, and any others who are interested in being there and want to be on our agenda, please let me know. I think I shared our email, but here is the email again. And again, for everyone, if you have anything that you want to share, I don't see any comments in the chat. But if you have anything else that you'd like to share, let me know now before we close out the meeting. But here's the email address for you. Excuse me. Last chat. Also for your calendars, here is the scheduling order for the hearing on the additional remedies that parties have negotiated. Scheduling order. The court sets a fairness hearing for April 29, 2022 at 9 a.m. in Portland Courtroom 15B before Judge Michael H. Simon. Any written objections or comments to plaintiff's unopposed motion to amend the amended settlement agreement ECF 276 are due no later than April 15, 2022. Anything else that we need to share? All right, everyone, it's been a great meeting. Thanks for everyone being here today. And we look forward to next month. Again, I know 30 days from now seems like a long time, but really it isn't. Like you said, being as a volunteer, it seems like we're constantly bombarded with PCCEP work. I want to thank our members, Gloria Canson and Tia Palafox, for being here today as well, as they continue to work on the Youth Speak Out. That's also happening next month, April 18th, Monday, April 18th. So we hope that you'll be at least part of that to see and observe what's happening with our young people and how they can also still figure out how they can be a part of this as well. So thank you everyone for being here. And Mike Myers, I want to make sure I bring you back up. Thank you so much for helping us with our meeting. We're hoping that he can provide more of the transition that's going forward with PCCEP, over the next couple of months. All righty. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a good night.
How can
Thanks,
I get the
everyone.
pictures to you? How can I get
Oh,
the
I
pictures?
appreciate it. I can, do you have email?
Yes. I'll put it in and Tia has my information.
Oh,
if you
Tia,
like.
then Tia, because Tia